even showing up here in the middle of a war, it's so strange to go home to Canada and people ask, so what's it really like? And they're expecting, terrible, terrible stories. And, yes, there are very terrible things happening and people are under a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and living under very difficult circumstances. But a lot of people are doing it with a lot of grace and a lot of, still making sure that they are enjoying what they can in life. And it's inspiring. It's like a good lead to follow, I think, for somebody like me.
Welcome to Storytelling Ukraine, the podcast of amazing stories. Make sure to listen to the end because the best stories are told when the guests are about to leave. And I'm very happy to welcome to our podcast our very first guest, Patricia Lynn.
Thank you.
Welcome, Patricia.
Hi.
Okay, so the first time we met was about 20 years ago, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Right. So, but it wasn't the first time in Ukraine for you, was it? When was the first time you came to Ukraine? Do you remember?
The first time I came to Ukraine was probably 1990 or 91, maybe.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Okay.
And I was still in university, and I came with my Ukrainian dance group from Canada. I think we did come to Kyiv. As a matter of fact, I think we flew to Helsinki, took the train to St. Petersburg, and then flew from St. Petersburg to Kyiv. And then I guess we took the train or maybe a bus, I don't remember, to Lviv.
Amazing.
And we spent most of our time in Lviv, yeah.
Okay, so that, journey alone.
That was a long time ago. Yeah.
Yes, but you must have had tons of stories to tell, yes, when you came back. So, 1991, and now we're in 2024.
Yeah.
Yes, January 2024. A lot of stories, a lot of time. But is there one story that really stands out? Like your Ukraine story?
It's hard to pick just one, but
okay. It can be 10.
I've come to Ukraine for a lot of different reasons. I first came with my Ukrainian dance group, then later I was coming for work actually, because I used to work for the government of Canada and I was on the Ukraine program, on the development program.
Okay.
So I would come for business meetings and trips, and those were always interesting. I remember there was one project I was involved in and we were working with university rectors, and
right.
I remember going with my Ukrainian partner, colleague, or staff person, and we went to visit a rector at a university. I don't remember where, but I remember it was 10 a.m. He invited us into his office. We had cognac. We smoked cigarettes, and I think there were some cookies there. And I remember thinking, nobody in Canada will believe this. This is like the complete opposite of a Canadian business meeting. But it was a great memory, and it was a lovely visit, lovely meeting. I don't remember what the results were, but I remember the cognac. And so there were a lot of those work things. But then from 2006 to 2010, I came here because my husband was working at the Canadian Embassy, and I was just the accompanying spouse. Eventually I started working, but in the beginning, I just had the chance to explore Kyiv, and we had a great apartment that was owned by the Canadian Embassy that overlooked St. Sophia. It was beautiful. And whenever we had so many guests come to visit us from Canada, we kind of would always be so excited to open the doors and they would walk in and see these golden domes. It was really beautiful. Yeah. And stories about that apartment. One interesting story is that one wall was infested with bats.
Oh.
Yeah, there were thousands of bats living in the wall, and you couldn't, you couldn't exterminate them, you couldn't kill them because they were protected animals. Yeah. So the embassy tried so many different ways to remove them, and one funny one was that there was men working on the roof one day, and we were on the 6th floor, and the top floor, and the embassy asked them, do you think you could maybe look underneath the roof? Maybe we could see how many bats are in there. And they told us, oh yeah, we have Pavlo. He's small. He can fit into any space. And so I was at home, and they had pavlova hanging on a swing, literally 2 pieces of rope and a piece of wood hanging down with gloves, looking into the roof and pulling out bats. And I was putting them in plastic bags. It was just crazy. Eventually, I don't know, eventually the bats were gone, but I don't remember the details about how, but
Pavlova made the arrangements.
Pavlova was the beginning, yes. But it was a big job. It was too much for just Pavlova.
Okay.
Another great story from that apartment and from that time in Ukraine was, it was my husband turned 40 when we were living here, and we had a big party in our apartment, invited all of our friends, and his birthday is at the end of October, so we asked everybody to dress in a Halloween costume. Okay. Some of our American friends came on the metro dressed as Virka Serdyuchka and her backup dancers. And like one of the guys was 6 feet tall, like over 2 meters, and he was wearing silver, small little shorts and like a Virka Serdyuchka dancer costume. Okay. They came, it was so fun. And then we found a local, like a band from a restaurant on Chrestiatic that did Ukrainian traditional music. Beautiful. And we invited them to come and play. So like at about 10, 11 o'clock, they had a wedding first. And then they came at about 10:30, 11 o'clock to our apartment and walked in and like just took the party to another level. It was so much fun. Excellent. Yeah, the only problem is we bought pumpkins to carve into jack-o'-lanterns. And I don't know, Ukrainian pumpkins are like made out of cement because we stuck the knife in and we couldn't get it out.
Oh yeah, I know this. Yes, because we were trying to do the same at university, and that was like a big effort to carve those pumpkins. That's something.
Yeah, I think at the end of the night they went over the balcony.
Oh, okay. Well, that's black soil. That's what black soil does to the pumpkins.
Exactly.
Okay. So when you had this party, did the bats already, were they gone? Or
yeah, that's right. It's Halloween. Bats, I think they may have been gone by then.
Okay, yeah. Maybe the party was the reason why they decided to move out.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So Ukraine is good for partying. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Great. So that was the place that overlooked Saint Sophia, and it must have been really beautiful. What about other places where you stayed, lived in Ukraine? Do you have any special memories associated with them?
I mean, whenever I've come for work, I've spent a lot of time in Kyiv, but I also tried always to go to Western Ukraine, because for me, like I think my grandparents came from Ternopil area, and I have to say I find the Ukrainian language a little bit easier to understand when speaking to people from the West. At least in the past I did. Now it's a little bit easier for me. But visiting markets in the Carpathian Mountains, we talked about visiting the market in Kyiv, which to me was like such a great experience, because there was just everything there, and it was a chance just to see normal people doing normal things.
Like selling goats, buying goats.
Exactly. And like you could buy beautiful things like pisanke or wood carving and things like that, but you could see where people buy clothes, and you can see where people buy livestock. And I mean, the funniest thing to me was people who would show up there in their old Zhiguli and open up the trunk, and it would be full of piglets. Like, I love this. I told this story 1,000 times. And then also I remember once there was a section of the market where they were selling like these bani for the top of like tin or gold looking, that people could put them on their little side altar by the side of the road by their house or whatever. And there was this car, like an old Lada or something, with one on top, and these guys were driving away holding it as they drove out. It was so funny. And like they thought it was funny too. I wasn't laughing at them. They were laughing too, because it was hilarious.
Yeah, it was like a mobile chapel,
Yeah, exactly. Nice. And you could like try different foods and really just get a chance to see different things. And is it in Kyiv where there's this school of traditional Ukrainian art?
Kyiv, yeah.
I mean, that place is great too if you're a shopper. We bought a really beautiful like wall hanging, material wall hanging there that we have in our house in Canada. I love it. And people always ask about it. And I remember, at the time when we saw it, it was like a little bit expensive, but we thought, okay, nobody else is going to have this.
Exactly, yes.
So,
yeah. Right. So, experiencing the Western Ukraine and living in Kyiv. And you said that, when you came to Western Ukraine, it was a bit easier to understand people speaking there, speaking the Ukrainian language in the West versus, Kyiv. And then you said that now it's easier. So over these years that you've observed like Ukraine evolving from a post-Soviet republic into an independent state. So what changes have you noticed like on this very like down-to-earth basic level? Apart from like one of the things is that Kyiv is becoming Ukrainian speaking. So what are some other things, or maybe you could develop this idea about the language, but maybe there are some other things that you've noticed this obvious change as an observer, something that you saw.
Well, like now I've been in Ukraine now since October 2022 for work, and previous to that, I'd come a couple of times as an election observer, but I'd left with my husband and our family in 2010. Okay. And the changes, mostly in Kyiv, I'm most familiar with Kyiv, between 2010 and 2022 are amazing. I just cannot believe how this city has blossomed into a European city, really. Like the number of really good restaurants in the center, but not just in the center, is amazing. Because I know when we lived here in 2010, like I said, we lived on Yaroslavy Val, it's right in the center, and there were a few restaurants, but not that many, and they were okay. But now it's just amazing. I mean, amazing restaurants. I remember at that time, I was always hesitant. Like I like beef, I like steak, and it was never really that great in Ukraine. Yeah. But I can't say that now. Like this is a silly example, but I have to say, like many times you can order beef in restaurants, and I think it's very good. It's just like the city. So that's a silly example. Restaurants, stores. There's so many more of them, but it really the city, at least what I see in Kyiv, has really turned into a European capital, and the people have changed too. Like, I mean, it really warms my heart to see Ukrainian women wearing sweatsuits. I mean, very fashionable, stylish sweatsuits. Yeah. But whereas when I used to live here before, they were very dressed like, I don't want to say extreme, but like high heels, which are beautiful, but so uncomfortable. Yeah. And I just love to see them adopting like stylish, but more comfortable clothing, And I mean, they still are, like I said, very fashionable and look beautiful, but to me now they're just so European, and that's a huge change in a very small time frame, I think. Yeah. It really is amazing. And also, like in the job I'm doing now, when I came, we're working a lot with schools, and when I came, my Ukrainian colleagues were saying, well, a lot of the decision making is now decentralized down to the Hromada level. Yeah. Schools can make their own decisions. And I thought, that's what you say, but actually my experience is that it's true. There's a lot of decision making that's, moved down to the lower levels of government and society, which is really nice to see, because it just gives people a lot more freedom. And, even showing up here in the middle of a war, it's so strange to go home to Canada and people ask, so what's it really like? And they're expecting, terrible stories. Yeah. And, yes, there are very terrible things happening, and people are under a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and living under very difficult circumstances. But a lot of people are doing it with a lot of grace and a lot of, still making sure that they are enjoying what they can in life. And it's inspiring. It's like a good lead to follow, I think, for somebody like me.
And you mentioned, restaurants and shops, and you said maybe it's a silly example. I think it's not, because it's part of, daily life. And if there are things you can enjoy, and and it's going to a nice restaurant or going to good shops, it's wonderful. I think that's a very good story, a very good example. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's true that women became more emancipated. That's true. How about men? Have you noticed any difference in the way they, dress? Because I mean,
yes.
they never had really a good reputation for being particularly stylish. But with all the hipster culture and all that, maybe you've noticed some changes.
Well, you brought it up, so I mean, it's true. Like I would say, when I was here from 2006 to 2010, and previous to that, I even remember a Ukrainian woman friend saying, "Do you think Ukrainian men are attractive?" And I was like, "I'm going to be polite. It's not that they're unattractive, but in that time, to me, they all looked the same. All the men wore black leather jackets. They had the same pointy toe shoes, same dress pants. They carried a little bag. And now people are far more individual, I feel. And it's true. Like they definitely look like hipsters, and they look like European or North American hipsters, like the beards." Like the style is very impressive, even for men. Even for men, yeah. I mean, of course, like everywhere.
You still see those guys, in leather suit, in leather jackets, and the purses. Carrying them around. But still,
but no, true. Like it's true. Even the guys, like, it's if there's like this European hipster culture that I think would be the same in so many different places, and Ukraine's into it. And I guess the other big thing that I noticed, big change that I noticed, is that, I like to shop. When I was here before, I was always really interested, especially in Ukrainian things like embroidery, vyshyvanki, all of those kinds of things. And we used to, and I had, some other expat friends who were the same. So we had like a list of people that, we could contact, we could phone, artists or whatever. And now it's all on Instagram, which makes shopping so much easier. I don't even have to leave the house. It's great.
It is great, yes. And there's been an explosion of this type of, handicraft and all the, folk arts. And these things, and you can really find very good stuff. Yeah,
and it's not just old and traditional. It's like, based on tradition, but it's stylish and it's modern and it's forward thinking, and that's really cool. That's like that's a sign of a culture that's looking to the future for sure.
Thank you. Yes, it's great to hear that.
So,
but mostly it's that that's Kyiv. When you visit your relatives, I don't know if you do, but if you do, in Western Ukraine, in Ternopil, if you go to Lviv, for example, for some weekend break, do you notice any changes there compared to 10, 15 years ago?
I mean, on this trip, like since I've been here in October, I've only been to Lviv once, and so I've been spending a lot of time in Chernihiv, and I spent some time in Kharkiv actually. And even in those cities, I see, like I didn't know Kharkiv before. I didn't know Chernihiv either. Actually, one Chernihiv story. I remember we drove when we were living in Kyiv. My mom came to visit, and for the day, it was a beautiful Sunday. We decided, let's go to Chernihiv. We'd never been. We drove there, and it is such a pretty city. Really nice. We took pictures by the cannons, looked at all the churches, and had lunch and everything. And driving back on the highway, there were like, all of a sudden we came around a curve and there were like 1,000 cows walking down the highway. It was the end of the day. They were heading home to their field. So I was, at the beginning, when I realized I would be going to Chernihiv a lot, I said to my husband, "Is that the cow city?" He said, "Yeah, it is actually." And I mean, I've never seen those cows again, but I really like Chernihiv. There's a lot to see there. So yeah, it's a really pretty location. I have been to Lviv once, and I mean, Lviv, I feel like Kyiv has exploded, and I mean, this is during wartime. So and I know before the war started, you were getting a lot of tourists from Western Europe. Even these, what are they called, like bachelor trips or whatever, stag parties and stuff. I don't know if that's good or bad that that's finished, but yeah, the city again has also exploded, like full of cafes, full of stylish people, full of people enjoying life. That was a real eye-opener. And I went to Bukovel once since I've been here, and I'd been to Bukovel once.
Bukovel is a ski resort. Just in case there are people who don't know about this, which I doubt.
In the West, and I went there once, and like 12 years ago when it was in the summer. And I was, again, I recognized nothing because there's so many hotels now and it's really developed. I was really surprised, but it made me feel like this could be a nice place to visit when you're not coming here for a conference.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah. But conferences in Bukovel, in and around, are pretty good. You know,
yeah,
as an interpreter. Yeah. Okay, great. You worked, as you said, in Chernihiv and in Kharkiv a little bit. Do you notice any? I mean, let's be open. There are some differences in the way people think and behave, and generally speaking, what they call a mentality. Yes, in eastern Ukraine, in Kyiv, in western Ukraine. So, would you say that these differences are really standing out, or would you say that there are more things that basically make Ukrainians
more united?
More united. So, what would you say?
I think in general Ukrainians do feel quite united to me as an outsider right now. Yeah. I think that people are, really coming together and doing their best to be united, even if they're Russian speakers or Easterners. I mean, that doesn't really matter. No. That's my experience. Like previously, I spent some time in Donetsk, and I mean, when I was there, we spent a little bit of time in Donetsk, and trying to speak to somebody in Donetsk was like trying to speak in Donetsk. Trying to speak to somebody in Donetsk in Ukrainian was like in Canada trying to speak to somebody in French in Saskatchewan. You think the response was like, I should know this. I learned this in school, but what do I say? But it doesn't matter. Everybody there was still a Ukrainian, just a Russian-speaking Ukrainian. That was a real eye-opener for me because I think diaspora have this anti-Russian language perception, which I understand, and I can understand Ukrainians who have now changed their language. But I do know a lot of first language Russian speakers who now speak a lot in Ukrainian, but aren't ashamed of their first language. And I don't know, it's not a very good answer here, but I mean, I work with a lot of the staff that I work with here are from Eastern Ukraine. Okay. And I think, these are people who've experienced a lot of the really unpleasant things of the war. Yeah. Like we have a couple of staff who have been displaced twice in the past 10, 12 years. That's a lot. To twice have to leave your home, reestablish, because of war, with no choice on your side. And they're still, positive, contributing to Ukrainian society, want to be a part of this country. It's impressive. And, Yeah.
So bottom line, Ukraine is united.
It feels like it to me. I'm not listening to the news very often in Ukrainian or anything like that, and I'm sure that there's things going on that I'm not aware of. But I do think, in general, the attitude seems to be pretty consistent in what I see. Yeah. So,
what do you think is one thing that the whole world gets wrong about Ukraine?
I think they think people here, Ukrainians, are like vodka drinking, pierogi eating, accordion players. I don't know. And it's so much more modern than that. I mean, I think it's a country that's, it's European, and I really hope it's going to be an official part of the European Union in the very near future because it deserves it. It's earned that place. And a lot of people have that attitude, I think. Yeah,
they do. Yes, and we do deserve it, I guess.
Yeah.
And on the contrary, what is one thing that the Ukrainians get wrong about themselves?
I think.
I know it's a tough question. Sorry.
Yeah, it is a tough question.
But I mean, I have to ask it because it's really weaves really nice into the story. So
I think Ukrainians, I think there's this international perception of Ukrainians as corrupt as well. And of course that exists. But it exists in a lot of places around the world in different forms, some official, some unofficial.
Yeah.
And I think Ukrainians maybe sometimes are a little bit embarrassed about that reputation, and they, you know, as they sort of are self-critical about it, and they should be. But on the other hand, I see a lot of personal integrity. I see, like, I work with 25, 30 Ukrainians, and I would say almost like all of them are intent on doing their job well and being professional and being a good representative and a good team player. And I think, you know, they should really lean into that because the more people in the country that give that kind of example, the better. But I see a lot of professionalism here, and so.
Great answer. Very inspiring. Thank you. Yeah, and one last question. If you were to write a book about Ukraine and all your Ukraine stories, what would be the title?
I think it would be something like Anything's Possible, because I feel like anything is possible in Ukraine.
Okay, excellent. Well, it is, and it's true. Everything is possible, and anything is possible. Thank you so much, Patricia. Thank you very much for your stories, for sharing your stories, and thank you, dear listeners, and those who watch us on the video podcast outlets. Thank you for spending your time with us. Please hit subscribe, follow, share, like, you know, this bell sign, whatever, any button that you see, because we need your support. And please support us on Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee. All the links are in the description. So let's make this a world of stories and not of headlines. See you.